Hello, everybody. We are back for our weekly Cafe y Casa webinar, and we're so excited. We've got Gavin Eckstrom with us today. So, quick introductions. I am Sarah Futa with Futa Home Team. We've
I'm
got
Denise, just Futa Home Team.
and then
And Gavin
Gavin.
Eckstrom with Cross Country Mortgage.
All right. So, we are going to talk about house hacking today. And I think when we're in a market where, the Colorado market affordability has definitely been a challenge, and house hacking is something we get questions on. And so, probably let's start because not everyone knows what house hacking is, but we definitely do. But the definition of house hacking, and here's my definition, and Gavin, I'd love to hear your definition of it, but
Yeah.
it's when you buy a property knowing that you're going to get additional income from someone renting another part of it. So usually you'll see this in like a
Yeah.
duplex or a triplex, but sometimes people buy a house and maybe they know they're going to have two people rent a single family. I don't know how that works. That's why we have you. But
Yeah.
basically buying a house knowing you're going to have income to help offset that mortgage payment. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah. I heard a millennial first say house hacking, and I'm like, well, what is house hacking? It just sounds like real estate investing, but it's not, because you can go a lot deeper with house hacking. You can rent out your couch, your garage. Like there's like we have a mutual friend, Tracy Schubert,
Yeah.
and she's like, hey, why don't you rent out your pool? And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, there's a place where you can put your pool up for rent, and if people want to rent your pool for the afternoon, they can rent it. And so I said, tell me more about that. And she goes, well, I'll come and rent it out. How much would you charge? I'm like, seriously, just go swim there, Tracy. You don't need to ask.
Gavin,
But
I am down to rent it. I want
Yeah.
it.
Everyone's
let's,
renting Gavin's pool now after this house
yeah,
hacking.
hey, let's do it. But really interesting in ways now. I think since like Uber and Airbnb, right? It's like, how can you use your car in a way to make more money, to maybe even make that car payment? And how can you use your house in a way to rent it out to help offset the payment for affordability? And we'll talk about that today.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into it. So, Denise, I know you've got some questions. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, so we kind of know how, house hack works. I rent my basement out and they help with the mortgage. So in terms of that, obviously we didn't know how to leverage a mortgage, like the how does it work for lending in the lending side?
Great question. Yeah. So, do we give credit to it? Can we use that income?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the answer is no. But when we're talking
Okay.
to a client, here's what we're seeing a lot right now in the clients you guys are referring to us and the people we're qualifying. We're asking them, right? Hey, would you be willing to rent out a room? Would you be willing to rent out your basement? You don't need all of this space. See, a lot of people can afford it, but they just don't want to. They don't want to. They don't want the house to own them. They don't want to have a 50% debt to income ratio, right? Of housing expense. And so what we're looking at is ways to offset it. Well, when we're asking clients, would you consider? Majority of them already have a roommate, right? Majority of them are already used to living with somebody else. And so when we ask them, would you consider? It's like, heck yeah, I would. Okay, well, what do you think you could rent a room for? Like I have a client I was speaking to today. He's like, well, I can rent. I've already talked to my buddies. They'll rent. This is a pretty big house. It was over $1 million. He's like, they'll rent a room for 1,600 each. I said, great. Now we can't use that income, but what it helps this client do is offset that mortgage payment mentally, right?
Mm.
Knowing that he's a single guy, he's going to buy a big house. He doesn't need all the room, but he wants a bigger house. He just want a big payment. And so one way to offset it is, okay, let's rent out those rooms. Now we're not going to be able to give you the income for it, but financially you already qualify. So
Mm.
it just offsets that pain, if you will. No different than you renting out your basement. I think eventually we'll start to see Fannie and Freddie catch on and maybe make some adjustments so we can overcome the affordability issue. But they realize more and more people are renting out rooms.
Mm.
It used to not be a thing, right? If you think about it, 10, 15 years ago, you weren't renting a room to a stranger. And now, over the years, it's becoming more and more popular. I have a client. He has bought, I think he's on his sixth house. This kid rents out his couch. He rents out his couch. He will rent out his couch for like $65 a night. And he's like, the couch that I bought on Craigslist for $500 has overpaid itself by 10x. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, who are these people that you're letting? And he's in the bar business. He's like, well, if I have a band that's coming through or somebody who's coming through town and they need a place to stay, I'll rent them my couch. Like, that's just
That's
whatever.
awesome.
Hey,
Making money. So it helps offset the obligation, right?
Right. Now, how does it work though? Let's say, Gavin, someone is buying so not a single family, but truly looking at like a duplex
Yeah.
or a fourplex.
Yeah. Traditional
And
investing, right?
Right. But they're going to live in one unit and they're going to
Yes.
rent out the other one, the other two. Can you
Yes.
use that income in a mortgage?
Yes, of course. You can use that income in a mortgage. The thing is they've got to be separate. They've got to have their own, not parcel number, but they've got to be like unit 1, 2, 3, A, B, C,
Okay.
up, down. You know what I mean? So as long as they're identified and zoned properly, then we can use them. We can use that investment income, and we use 75% of it. So let's just say that one of the units rents for $1,000. We're going to give credit for 750 on the application. And the reason that we're not giving $1,000 is there's going to come a time where maybe it's not rented. There's going to be some expenses that they're going to have. And so 25% we say every month is going to go towards expenses. It's probably never that high. It's very conservative. So we use that number, and that's basically what we go with.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I know, I mean, in Denver Metro, still a duplex has a relatively high
Yeah.
price point, but there's other, I mean, like in the Springs, Colorado Springs, you can definitely get some, I mean, you can get a duplex in the Springs for 500, 550,
Yes.
which is very realistic from an investment standpoint. And sometimes there's already someone living in there. Like, do you need to show the lease, like an active lease, or could it be historical
It can be
income?
historical. Yeah. So it can be historical. If there's a lease in place, we're going to go with the lease that's already in place. So that's
Okay.
one option. Let's see, you're talking about Colorado Springs, high density of veterans, right? So if
Yep.
you're a veteran, you could buy no money down, living in unit A and rent out B, C, D, E. If you have dual veterans, if there's two veterans buying together, they can buy up to 7 units.
Oh, wow.
The traditional
Oh, wow.
buyer the traditional is 4, right? Because anything over 4 is commercial. You can go 7 units if you've got dual veteran status. So veteran could live in one, veteran A could live in one unit, veteran B live in the other, and they could rent out the other 5.
Oh, interesting.
Okay,
Not
nice.
many people. There's a hack right there. Not many people know that. So when we talk, I give a talk down in the Springs about VA home ownership, and that's one of the tactics that we talk about is if I was a veteran buying in today's market, I would buy a triplex, duplex, fourplex, fiveplex. You know what I mean? Fourplex if I'm buying by myself. If I was a veteran buying it with another veteran, I could go up to 7 units. No money down. That's great.
What about
Yeah.
a non-VA? So if I want to go and buy a duplex, would it be like what, 20% down?
No, Fannie came out and they have a new rule now, 5% up to 4
Oh yeah,
units.
oh that's
So
right. Yeah.
So that's huge, right? So people wanting to get into investing, that's a great tool because traditionally, you're right. People were thinking it's 20% down, but it's different if it's going to be occupied. So, house hack. Here's what I would tell you. When my kids go to buy a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're either going to do FHA with 3.5% down, or they're going to do a first time home buyer program with 3% down, conventional, right? If they buy, maybe they do chaff or whatever. But whatever program they do, they're going to put very little down. I'm going to instruct them to live in it for 1 year and then rent it out.
Mm-hmm.
Live in it for 12 months, then go rent it out and go buy your next property. While you're living in it, rent out rooms if you can, right? There's nothing that says that you can't. Take that money and use that to be your next down payment. Don't pay extra towards the mortgage that you're living in now. take that money and start a savings account to use that for your next down payment. Now your next down payment, you go from you did 3.5% on that property. Now you go buy a Fannie, you put 5% down, buy a 4 unit. You see how you're just compounding that money?
Yeah, I
And,
love that.
and now you're just taking that money and basically compounding it to buy your next property. If they do that, by the time that they're 30, they'll have a single family and they'll have a fourplex, which is great, right?
And the cash flowing. Yeah.
Cash flowing immensely. So if we could teach our younger generation that simple house hack, and I don't have the ability to tell you, what's the return on investment, because everyone's going to be a little bit different, but your return on an investment is going to be huge, almost 100%, because not only are you taking that 3.5% to buy your first property that's going to increase in value, now you're rented out your rooms there,
Right.
And then next, I would tell somebody too, if I was to buy a single family residence as an investment property, and let's say put 20% down, which 25% gives you a much better rate, so you're better off putting 25. I would rent every room out. I would let somebody. I would rent out every single room. Let's say you buy a 5-bedroom house, rent out every single room, and the person who lives in the master is basically the landlord. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now I'm renting out every room, and I tell the guy, the individual who's living in the master, hey, you're going to pay X amount less because I want you to manage the property. Now that individual is managing the property for all the other rooms. So think about it. If you're renting, what can an average room rent for in Denver right now?
Ooh, that's a great question.
1,000. I've seen
1,000. Yeah.
8 to 1,200. 8 to 1,200. Okay. Well, if I have a 5-bedroom property, right, and let's say, okay, call it 800 grand, I'm paying for it, it's going to more than cash flow. And all I have is an internal landlord that's basically managing it for me. It's less expensive than a property manager, and I'm renting out every single room. Right?
You're so smart, Gavin.
Do you do this? You do this? I don't do this. Right? I don't do this because I don't take my own advice.
Well,
like, here's my notes from I was telling you, the guy said 1,600. Here's my notes. 1,600 split utilities. Like, I deal with this all the time. I hear these stories all the time, and I just help them. So a couple of things. There's 3 sites that I think every house hack, anyone who wants to get into house hacking should pay attention to. One is Rent Ready, RENTREDI. Okay. It will give you rents for single family, duplex, triplex, all the way up to I think commercial. It will tell you what you could rent for, what you should get for room rental.
Okay.
Air DNA. Air DNA is great for Airbnb. Okay. Yeah. And then Turbo Tenant. Turbo Tenant will give you, again, all of the information as we explained above. So those are the 3. It's better than Rental Meter. I know there's some other ones out there. Those are the 3 that I'm most familiar with.
Okay. Those are great. I've used Air DNA before. That is a robust tool if you're thinking the short-term rental side of things. For sure. I think the cool thing about house hacking, and it's so interesting, you would think as realtors, we have buyers who buy homes, especially first-time home buyers, right? And you would think we'd be like, hey, now call me when you're ready to sell. And Denise and I always have the conversation like, hey, we're so excited you bought this house. Don't ever sell it if you don't have to. Let's leverage this one and go buy another one, right? I mean, it contradicts what you think a realtor would tell you to do, but I wish it was advice that I would have taken advantage of when I bought my first house, right? I wish I still had my first house and rented it and bought another one and another one and another one. Because the long-term wealth and investment that you get from real estate is undeniable. And sometimes us who are in it all day, like you just said, gosh, we see all these scenarios. Now we need to practice what we preach, right?
I was speaking to an agent today. She's 80 years old. okay, here in Colorado. She's just the nicest lady. So I just check in on her every now and then. And she was telling me today that I said, what do you think about this settlement that's come down? How's that going to affect you? And she was sharing with me that she's made some poor investments in life. And I said, well, how many doors do you own? And she said, I own the door that I own one. She goes, but I'm investing in the stock market and I hope something hits. And I said, well, wouldn't you have been better off investing in real estate? And she goes, yes, but now it's too late. Yeah. So I sit there and hear that story and I'm sitting there thinking of how many people do we know that one day it's going to be too late if they don't start taking the time to invest now or understand the value of investing.
Absolutely.
You see what I mean?
No, absolutely. And
she's 35 years in the industry right here in Colorado. She's seen the ups and downs, right? And she's like, I didn't come from a lot of money, so I didn't know I didn't value money, right? And so let me stand up because
you're sensitive.
But I've been sitting still too long. I'm not used to that. So you see what I'm saying? I'm like, well, you're in the industry. How do you not do this? And you could buy a property at a discount because you're licensed.
Right.
So shame on us as lenders and realtors to not reach out to our past clients and say, listen, the best way to accumulate wealth is real estate.
Yep.
Your 401k is not going to allow you to retire, and don't plan on Social Security.
Right.
Oh gosh.
So how many of our clients are all of our past clients should be on here listening to this about house hacking and the benefits and the advantages of it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and it's just, we were even talking about this earlier today. Our affordability index is increasing. It's not going to decrease, and
right.
Affordability is just going to become more of a challenge, right? And so there are things like house hacking that make a lot of sense. But at the same token, 2.5 years ago, interest rates were 3% and people didn't want to get into bidding wars, right? Because they didn't realize how cheap the cost of money was at that time. And now, they see like a, 7% or 6.75% or whatever, right? It's kind of all over the place at the moment. And they're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to finance at that rate. And I guarantee you 5 to 10 years from now, they're going to be like, gosh, I should have, just like they're like right now, I should have bid more so I could have the 3% rate. They're going to be like, gosh, I wish I could get the 7% rate, because even if the rates go down, the price of things are going to keep going up. And, we see it.
Think about cars. That's when we were in trouble, when cars were selling out. You're like, wait, what? And people were going, literally people were going door to door and seeing a car in the driveway and saying, would you be interested in selling that car?
Yeah.
Think about this. Airbnb owns absolutely no properties, right? 0. And they're worth more than the Marriott.
That's crazy.
Think about that. Airbnb has a higher valuation than the Marriott, and they own absolutely no property.
It's crazy.
That is crazy.
Well, it tells you the story, right? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that try to convince you that renting is a better option. And sure, if you don't want to build wealth, then go for it.
I just don't know how you build wealth with renting. And I can't agree with you more. Property, I always tell my kids, and listen, do I follow this? Not 100%. Your real estate is meant to be owned, not to be sold. Yep. And so I tell them, you should never sell real estate unless you absolutely have to. So I bought my first place at 19, and I often get asked, well, how did you buy it? And I bought it on contract. I was actually closing on a transaction for a client, and they bought their house from an estate sale. And as I was sitting there, I said, do you have any other properties to sell? And they said, absolutely. We've got one more to sell. It's downtown Salt Lake City. It's a 1-bedroom condo. We're just looking for the right buyer. And I'm like, well, I'm single. I want to live downtown. This sounds great, right? And I'm like, well, what do you think you're going to sell it for? And they're like, 70,000. I bought it for 63. Okay. 800 square feet, roach infested. It was beautiful, but it took me all about 10 grand to clean it up. Okay. I stayed in it for about, I can't remember, but 3 to 5 years. I can't remember exactly. But I sold it to my sister because I love her. I sold it to her for $265. Yeah, because I love her. You cut that. So
I did.
I
Yeah.
parlayed that. I parlayed that money into the house I bought up Immigration Canyon, which then when I moved out of Utah, I sold that property. I parlayed that money into my house on Monaco. The house on Monaco I sold and bought the house that I'm actually living in now in Cherry Hills. Parlayed that. You see what I'm saying? So I kept moving that money from home to home to home to home.
Yeah. I mean, we bought our first house in South Bend, Indiana for $83,000 and, moved to Colorado, leveraged that money to buy the house in Colorado, leveraged the house in Colorado to buy another one, to buy another, that's where you can take either path, right? Either path, if I wouldn't have bought that first house, I wouldn't be in the house I'm in today.
Yeah.
Right. And then at the same token, now in hindsight, I'm like, how could I have bought all those houses and kept them to not sell them, but still leverage the equity from them into the next one? And that's where, house hacking is so much more than just someone renting from you initially. Like there's that piece of it, but house hacking is really just buying real estate and leveraging the equity that you build from that.
In untraditional ways, right?
Yes.
In untraditional ways.
Yes.
So I wrote down some things in regards to, I got to tell you. So my sister sells real estate in Utah. So she calls me. It's probably been 9 months now. And she said, hey, your old condo's on the market. Do you want to buy it back? What do you think it was on the market for? So this was let me tell you, this was 93 when I bought it for $63,000.
Okay.
I sold it to her. Let's just call it 2,000.
Okay.
Ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you now fast forward to now? What do you think it's on the market for?
540.
What do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say something 600s.
750. One bedroom. Yeah.
Wow.
Talk about return on investment. Had I kept that from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So think about this is for some of those first time home buyers out there. Look at non-traditional ways. They're still going to use a real estate agent to write the contract. Look at non-traditional ways to buy real estate.
Yeah.
I bought it from an estate sale just by asking the right question. Had I not asked that question at the closing table, I might not have ever found the property.
Yep.
Right? So I wrote down some other house hacking that we might not be thinking about. Okay. Car spaces, garage spaces. If you live near the football stadium, the baseball park, you can rent out. I've parked on people's lawns before for events, right? So
I've heard of that. Yeah.
I'll never forget. I went to a Cubs game in Chicago. Okay, alley parking. All of the garages are open. They're garage spaces of homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
It was $50 to park. And basically, they leave the garage open. You have to be out. The game would end, like, let's say, at 8:30. You got to be out by 9:30.
Yeah.
Right? So the homeowners, Chicago is a very walkable city. Most people don't use their garages. So the people that live next to the baseball field, like this guy had the whole alley. And I asked him, what will you make on a night like tonight? He said, I'll make about $5,000. He said, I'll make more when people don't pick up their car in time.
There you go.
So garage spaces. We talked about swimming pools. I told you about the couch surfer, the guy who rents out his couch.
Yeah.
Let's see. Extra rooms. We talked about that. A multi-unit property, living in one and renting out the others. We spoke about that. Obviously, short-term rentals. Now, if I was doing Airbnb, I would look at, designing the place to where it's like selfie heaven because everybody wants to be on social media. And so I would look at it that way as one option. The other I would look at as an executive rental. And what I mean by that is we've got a lot of individuals coming in town. So if you can furnish it a little bit nicer than most and pitch it as only executive only, right? You'll get more money. So executive rentals. So then you go market it to companies that are bringing people in, and maybe you do a longer than nightly rental. For executive rental, you do maybe 30 days, right? Because an executive comes in, give him a place, him or her a place for 30 days to call home. So
Yep.
executive rentals, you can charge more. Um, Fix and flips with live-ins. This is a little bit more riskier, but buy a fixer-upper and allow somebody to live in it while you're fixing it up.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of the
again,
BRRRR method, isn't it? The BRRR, like buy, renovate, like
yeah,
there's
I
a
don't
whole
know the
nother
acronym,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah. So think about this: when you're fixing up a property, you're not getting any income from it. So what if you were to rent out part of the room, like a room, while you're doing the fix up? You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
smart.
Something to consider there. Um, Rent out a garage or storage space.
Yep.
Um, hey, listen, if you're renting out a room, right? Okay, you get the room for X, you get the garage for Y. They got to pay for the garage too. They don't just get it, no different than if you're renting in an apartment. They generally don't give you parking space for free.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
We talked about Airbnb. I like this one. The guy in New York got in big trouble doing this, so just be careful.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So what this gentleman did is he went and basically leased out penthouses in New York. Okay, so he was the responsible party for the
Well, I've
place.
heard
He
of
did
this.
not own them. He did
Yeah.
not own these, but he basically leased out penthouses and then put them back up on Airbnb for rental.
Yeah. I've seen
He
that. A
did
lot of
really well. He did really well until the market crashed, and
yeah.
now he had all of these rental properties that he had no rents coming in while he was still responsible for the payments.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, we
that's
talked
something to consider. Like, can you make money and not own real estate off of real estate? The answer is yes. You can go lease a property and then sublease it back out to somebody else. So lease it at one price and then go sublease it. So Airbnb getting the opportunity to Airbnb it. Some people may say, no, I won't do that. But in
yeah.
New York, these penthouses were willing to do it.
Yeah, you see that. I see that a lot in some bigger cities like LA, San Diego, things like that. I think the moral here, kind of like wrap us up on this, is there's so many things you can do. And I think there's so many people out there that we connect with and have conversation with, but they're like afraid to ask and talk about it. And it's like, talk to
Yeah.
us about it because we'll connect you with Gavin and his team, right? His team's great. We've worked with them for a long time. Um, let's connect, let's brainstorm, let's talk about what's possible. Don't just stop wanting to talk about it because you don't think it's attainable, right?
Yeah.
We can come up with ways and if it's not attainable for you right now, we can at least have the baseline to figure out when it is, like, what do you need to do to make it attainable and how do we get there, and be
Yeah.
accountability partners with you on that. So,
Yeah.
Gavin, I
That's
love that you joined us on this because I
Yeah,
think it's such
absolutely.
a fun topic and not enough people are talking about it.
Well, hopefully this will help generate some activity and some questions around it. And if I can answer any further questions, you know where I'm at. And maybe this is
Absolutely.
an idea for you and I to get our clients together and start talking more about this with them, just so they're
Right?
educated, just so they know more about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to pop up your contact info really quick. I've got your just your homepage here, and we'll definitely put it in
Yeah.
the chat and stuff. But Gavin's with Cross Country Mortgage, and he's got a great team working with him. And so we'll put his website and our links on all our videos and all of that good stuff so that you guys can find that. Gavin is also our co-sponsor on our awesome Dingus Day event coming up
Yeah.
on April 1st.
Looking
So
forward to
make sure, yeah, I'm gonna throw up our QR code here really quick. But if you click on here on our Cafe y Casa QR code. You'll get information about everything, about our past webinars. We do free coffee on the third Friday of every month. Gavin, you're going to be there with us in April.
Yes.
We snowed out in March, but Denise rallied for
Yeah.
for us to
I was
How
there.
was it? Were you the only
It was
one, or did people weather the storm
No,
to come out?
it was actually pretty busy. It was right after the
Good.
storm, so it was on the Friday, and yeah, people are there for free coffee.
I love
They
it.
came.
I love it.
They came.
It's awesome.
So we are going to be talking about first-time homebuyers next Monday. So that's going to be exciting. We've got an Easter event this Saturday at the Reunion Coffee House. We've got so much going on. We hope you join us. Gavin will be at Dingus Day on April 1st.
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Come hang out.
So
Bring your house hacking questions to us, and we'll answer them over a nice cold beverage.
Absolutely. There you go. Other choice. Whatever cold beverage you want. So
I love it.
All right. Well,
All right.
that is what we got for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Gavin. And you always know where to find us. So reach out. We're the Futa Home Team and Team Gavin with Cross Country. And you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thanks you guys.
Bye.
Bye.